Hello everyone, welcome to part 14 of this series. Today we're going to set up a magic spell. Not only will we use animations and particles, but we're also going to affect the grass with this spell. For this video we'll simply be able to execute the spell because we'll set up a comprehensive system regulating all of this later. Before we start, I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. This scene will be made available on Patreon. So we're starting off with the animation side of this. Now I've used a medieval animation bundle asset for this. Not really sure what the name is, but I'll make sure to link it in the description. It is not a cheap asset, so I'll link a couple of alternatives in the description as well. If you don't have any magic type of animations yet, just keep in mind that if you're using different animations, you'll just have to tweak the timing a bit, but that's really little effort. So yeah, let's get started. Now, first thing I'm going to do, and obviously it would be better to have an animation folder somewhere, but we're going to create a state for this. So let's create a game creator, characters, and a simple state. And let's rename this to magic spell. No, let's do fireball. Fireball's better. It's a fireball after all. So then I'm going to look up the animation I'm using. So fireball, and obviously go ahead and there we go. Go ahead and pick whatever animation you have that works. So the one I'm using is the one you've seen in the intro. Just make sure that if you are importing a new animation, that you are, where is fireball? There we go, fireball. That you bake the transform, rotation, and the offset, etc., just like we did before with animations, because otherwise it might look a little wonky. So yeah, keep that in mind. Reason I'm using this spec, by the way, is because it's one of those specs with a ridiculous amount of animations, and yeah, it just makes life easy for me. So but you can use whatever animation you want that fits the style basically. So now that we've done that, we've added it to our state. We're going to set up a really basic action here, and keep in mind that for now I'm not going to tie this to mana or some system that allows you to assign it yet. We're going to do that after we've created a couple. It's just a lot easier to do it all at once. So let's go ahead. So for now I just have a folder in our character. I'm going to drag it below combat, and let's do a trigger. I'm just going to use key down, so I'm going to use keep at 9. Again, this is completely temporary. It's just in order to make this work. It is really temporary, so please keep that in mind. So we're going to start off with a little burst shake. Now, a camera burst shake is obviously, optional. But I do like how it dramatizes the effect a tiny bit, so yeah, it's pretty nice. You don't have to do that, completely optional, but it's a nice little effect. Then next up we're going to change a property. Yeah, I think it's property. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to change the property. During this spell the player is not controllable, so you need to finish this spell, which makes it the high risk reward type of situation. So it's not controllable. Then next up we're going to use a attach, and we're not going to add anything yet, where basically this spell will have several visual effects. Now if you are using Cinti assets just like I am using the Polygon particle effects pack. I'm pretty sure that's insanely popular and a lot of people have it. But it honestly has some really, really good effects. So yeah, we're definitely going to use that. So we're not attaching anything yet here. Let's make sure this is player. And yeah, we still need to attach the game object. Now the reason we're using attach hand is in the intro you saw a fireball in his hands, move with his hands basically. Now the only reason to really way to really time that well is by not timing it at all and just literally attaching a temporary fireball to his hand. It's a really simple solution in order to make sure it looks good. Then next up we're going to use two set actives. We're going to drag in those objects, don't worry about it. Then next up we're going to use instantiate. And reason I'm doing all of this right now, and I'll go over it again, is just to make sure I'm not skipping anything. Still fresh in my mind, just did it before. So yeah, just follow along. Now these offsets are based on the animation, and I'll go over that in a bit. I'll really explain everything and why we're doing all of this. Next up we have the player state. Now that is an important one. That's the one we just set up, so let's already drag that in. Then we're going to wait, and again this wait really depends on how long your animation is. So for my animation it's 2.5 seconds, but if you use a shorter animation, longer animation, it might be a bit longer. So just literally open your animation and check the time. The time in my animation is 2.5, so hence the 2.5. Then we're going to, well, let's just make life easy. We're going to reset our state again. We're going to make the player controllable again. And we're going to deactivate those objects we were activating. We're going to remove the object from his hands. And I'm adding a little weight here. That's for the fireball to actually really gain some distance, etc. Optional. I'll go over it in a bit. So let's actually start off with all of our particles, and then we can actually fill in this list of actions and make it all come to a reality. So I'm going to go to, where is particle effects? Particle effects, there we go. Prefabs, and I'm going to look up, I think it was healing. Yeah, healing circle. There we go. So there's two options here. So you have healing circle 1 and 2. The difference basically is that, yeah, this is what the first one looks like. It's pretty nice, it's nice, nothing wrong with it. And then you have the second one, which I'm not sure where it is. Let me properly drag it in. Is this effect, and I think that looks a bit nicer, but yeah, so I'm going to use that one. So where's our player? So I'm going to drag it into the magic folder, which will automatically align it pretty well. But there's a small offset with the player of 0.1 because with his animations, and I'm adding that just to make sure we're properly seeing the animation. Now next up I'm going to change the color. So this matches fire pretty well. Yeah, that's a decent color. And I'm just going to change all of that as well. And obviously you can get creative, use different colors for all of it. The lighting makes it look slightly different anyway, but get creative, pick something else if you want. This just kind of matches fire a lot better, so that's why we're using it. Then next up we're going to use a prefab that I'll add in the description, and the prefab is for the Vegetation engine. Now, if you remember our scene terrain setup, the vegetation engine was used to create motion and color, etc. in the world. That's what we're going to do with this prefab as well. So I'm going to drag in this one, which is a small explosion, basically, and it's aligned pretty well. So yeah, it's decent alignment. I think I need to drag it down a bit though. So -1. And basically what it does is, you know, it interacts with the grass and oh, that's the wrong one. It needed to be the small one. This is a bit too big for, you know, such a magical effect. And are these already down? No, they're not down yet. Okay, so let's drag this down a bit. So let's do -2. That's fine. And basically what it does is it impacts the grass. Now you need to make sure that the layers are set up correctly. So this is the motion layer. And yeah, as you can see, it impacts. Now this middle one is way too big for a small explosion. So I'm going to remove that from the prefab by unpacking the prefab and removing this one, the middle one. And yeah, as you can see, this is a small impact, you know, on the grass. It's not too big. I'm okay with that. I don't think it really needs that big of an impact. It's, you know, not that big of a spell, but you can go crazy if you want. But I think this is enough. Now we're going to turn these off and we're going to go to our actions, and these will be objects we'll be turning on. So let's drag them in. There we go. And let's make sure we turn them off again as well. So that's it for that part, really simple. Now next up we're going to look up a fireball, and I'm going to go to Polygon Particle Effects. And for fireball we have shooting straight, 0, 1. I think there's only one. Yeah, there's only one. I created this one, which is a duplicate, and this is going to be quite an important one because this is basically going to do a lot. So let's duplicate this one, and I'm going to just rename it to straight tutorial just to keep track of everything. And what we're going to do with this is quite a lot, really. So let's restart this. As you can see, this is a fireball, and that's the one I'm using. Now this is really cool, but there's a couple of problems with it. One, if we're going to instantiate this, there's no delay, you know, it starts straight away. And depending on the animation you're using, you need to add a delay here, and that's quite important. So mine is going to be 1.8 because that matches the animation I'm using. But yeah, play around a bit and see what matches the animation you're using, because yeah, that's quite important. But yeah, that's an important part. Now, next up, we're going to be adding another one of those prefabs I added in the description. So let's remove this. And that's going to be the trail one. So I don't think there's really anything I changed in this one. I might be wrong. So we're going to drag this in. And yeah, this is a trail which has an effect. Again, you need to set the layer properly. So the layer needs to be motion. It's quite important. And basically what this does is this creates a motion ripple effect in the terrain. So I'm going to demonstrate really what this does. So let's open the one I created. Apparently it has a little delay as well. That's good to know. I honestly forgot that. So we're going to pick up this trail. Where is it? There we go. And I'm going to turn it on. This is just demonstration, by the way, just to be absolutely clear. And let's turn on those gizmos. It's not really doing much because there is a delay maybe. That could be the reason. I'm not really sure anymore. So yeah, let's set this to motion. Let's go back and let's drag in the original. There we go. So yeah, what this trail does is it's basically, so if you move it around like this, it gives you this effect. And that's really cool. That's exactly what we need. And yeah, it's just basically a prefab for the vegetation engine. So really cool. And we're going to be adding this to our, oh, let's cancel that. And we're going to be adding that to our spell. So what did I call it again? I'm not really sure. Let's go to prefabs, tutorial. There we go. Easy to find. So yeah, there we go. So we have our trail, and obviously this won't work. We'll need to be able to match this along with our particle effect, because otherwise, yeah, it won't really work. And that's going to be quite important because it's going to be doing a bit more than that. So yeah, this is the effect we want to have. So let's make sure we align this properly, and I'm going to do -6, I think. Yeah, 6 is going to be enough. And the reason for that is we need to make sure it stays under the map, obviously, because, you know, if it's not under the map, it will show up, and yeah, that doesn't look so good. So that's why we use the -6. I'm going to add a trigger here, and we're going to call this on enable. What is it? Enable. There we go. And we're going to create an action here. Nope. There we go. So let's remove these actions. And this will be a weight of 1.8. That's the same weight we put on our trail here, so on our delay. And it needs to match that, because obviously it would be a bit strange if this, you know, moves along together with, it needs to move along together with the particle itself. So then let's add a transform move. Let's make sure rotation is off, quite important. Our target is going to be our actual trail itself, and the space needs to be from self as well. I'm going to do duration 4, and Z is going to be 120. Now, why Z? Because Z's the active axis it's projecting in, and it's using itself to do that. So world space Z doesn't matter, that axis, it's about the axis in the particle. So good to pay attention to that. So next up, we're going to create a new element. Let's drag it in. So element, there we go. We can keep it in here, it doesn't need to be there. And let's turn all of this off. There we go. And oh, I see I need to do a -6 here as well. I thought I did that with the parent. That's okay. So these are all the same. I'm going to make this a lot bigger. It needs to scale a bit. There we go. And the element we're going to use is colors. And why colors? Because we want the grass to color along. So let's set up that. I think this is decent. We'll see. I'm not really sure. It looks okay. And I'm not sure if I changed the priority. We'll try it out without. Not sure if that was necessary anymore. Anyway, we'll keep it like this for now. So yeah, we have color and we have our trail effect. And what we need next is another thing, I know, and that's going to be a sphere. And this sphere is not going to have a mesh, so let's remove that, turn on the trigger, and yeah, that's it. Now next up, I'm going to make sure that all of this is tagged with spell, and our sphere is tagged with spell as well. And as you can see, it's way too big, so it's good to be way too high, so it's good that we turn that on. And yeah, that's pretty much perfect. Let's see. It's still too high actually. There we go. Perfect. So this will all move along with the trail, which all moves along perfectly fine with the projectile. So that's why we're using this Z120. So that's the movement. This is the duration, so the speed. And we're going to try this out. I might, have these numbers wrong, and otherwise I'll double check it. So we've created our prefab. Now let's actually add it to our actions. So that's what we're instantiating. Tutorial, and there we go. So we have everything. Now the offset here is quite important. So I use these values because that matches my animation. It's quite important to point out. If you personally use a different animation, then you might have to align this a bit yourself. So I suggest going in play mode, pausing, and just trying it out a bit. But this is this matches what I'm using. So next up, we're going to go and use a fire as well, and I'm going to use this one, which is a really basic fire. So let's drag it in. As you can see, kind of mimics, that's going to mimic the fireball we use in the start of the animation. So let's duplicate this one, and I'm going to rename it to tutorial as well, just to keep things simple. So let's open it up, and here we have pre-warm turned on. I need to turn that off. I'm going to add a small start delay of 0.2. And next up is going to be the weirdest part, but I need to make it a lot smaller. And I'm not really sure why this is necessary, but if I basically attach it to the player without doing that, the fireball becomes enormous even though it's really, really small. So yeah, that's that's the reason I'm doing it, but I'm not really sure why that happens, why it becomes so much bigger. But I mean, that's okay. There's a fix, which is quite important part. There's no offset here, no rotation. It just attaches to the right hand, and that's it. So we're good there. So let's have a look at what we're still missing. So we have our fireball, we have our effects, we have the fireball itself, animations, layers. Yeah, seems like we pretty much have everything actually. So I'm going to save, and let's actually give this a try. Cool. Now I'm going to test it with this big open field so I can actually see if I really did the distance well. So I'm going to press 9. And yeah, something definitely went wrong here. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, something went wrong. So let's head over to that fireball again. And why? I'm only moving the trail itself. I need to move the entire object. Well, that's a good value. So let's try that again. Cool. So pressing 9, and there we go. So yeah, 120 seems to be a bit too fast given the duration we're using. So I'm definitely going to cheat. I'm just going to look up what values I used before. So it was 160 and duration was 10. There we go. So sorry about that, but instead of just endlessly guessing, it's a lot easier if I do it like that. Perfect. Now that I'm in here, let's change this color a bit as well. It's a bit somber. There we go. I know fire is not a happy occasion, but yeah, it might be better. Although I'm not really sure. Anyway, doesn't really matter. It's a small detail. Play around with the color. So let's try this out. And there we go. And yeah, they're following each other along. So pretty nice. Now next up we need to make sure this actually impacts our enemies as well, and that's why we created the collision. Now I do know that particles can send messages regarding collisions as well, but I haven't found a way to actually call that out in Game Creator with actions. So that's why I'm using the collision. If you come up with a better idea that actually does match Game Creator actions, please let me know. So let's go into our character. And there we go. Now I'm going to be pretty lazy here and I'm not going to change values, which you obviously should, but I think it's more interesting to do all of that once we, set up the full backbone behind it, if you will, of how to use all of these spells, and we can set different values. I'm just going to show you how he can actually take damage, and then we can continue from there. So this is going to be a collision, or just a tag enter. I'm not really sure anymore. I'm going to do collision with tag. And yeah, that's going to use spell. So by the way, if I didn't explain that, I'm pretty sure you're well aware. If you don't have a tag you want to use, just literally click add tag and tag it. So let's set up our conditions and actions here. Now I'm going to remove those conditions again because for now I'm going to be lazy and keep all of the same values. But we did create list variables for that, which is the nice thing. So we can actually modify those without having to change all of these conditions and creating new ones. And yeah, I'm going to use the default damage effect as well. If you want to get creative and actually, add some flames. Now that I'm saying that, I kind of want to add some flames myself. Let's just do that. It's really simple. So we're going to duplicate the original. Let's rename this to Flame Effect. It's a horrible name, but that's fine. And yeah, it has the blood effect. That's it. So we're going to remove that and we're going to use something fiery-ish. So fire, what is a decent size? Oh, that's a small one we created. Sorry about that, I forgot. Let's do... How big is this? And that's also really small. Wow, are these all mine? Can't remember doing that. They seem to be all mine. Let's do fire big then. I mean, yeah, that's it's a bit much maybe, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay, I'm just going to do that. So we're going to add this flame effect. Yeah, it might be a bit much, but I think it's fun. Now let's drag this down a tiny bit. There we go. Yeah, it might be a bit exaggerated, but it's a cool looking effect. Cool. So this action is going to turn this on and then turn it off again. So that's the nice thing we set up with our damage effect. So now that we go back here, we're going to use the flame effect once we get hit with the spell. So nice and simple. And let's try this out. Now I do hope collision enter was the right one, otherwise we'll need to yeah, I'm just going to use tag enter, just not to risk it. Tag enter is something I've used before, so yeah, let's do that. It's a bit safer. So I'm just going to rush towards him so he can actually see us. And obviously I'm using combat again, so we're triggering. And yeah, as you can see, we're we're adding damage. Now this downside of this is, he should maybe have a bit more of a hit reaction. He's been set on fire and the spell should have a bit more effect. But yeah, basically that's it. It works. It's really simple. I think the really cool thing with this is that we can, demonstrate how we can actually affect the environment as well and actually have some impact rather than just, shooting a particle without doing much. I think it's really nice to, have a bit more of a environmental effect. I think it's a nice touch. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.